let's talk about functions. And what is a function? A function basically groups together part of the code or the program. Also, we can say that the function should have a concrete task, and it should probably have a smaller portion of the program which does something, and we can call it the name. And yeah, functions usually have a name. And let's draw a function here. So we can say that function basically is like a box which does something, and we can have a name for it. Let's say currently it's A. And actually it's a small program. There can be several lines of codes inside this function, but now I've grouped together those lines and I've called those lines a function, and the name of the function is A. And now if I want to call this function, I can just say in my code that let's call this A, and sometimes later I can also call this same function. So basically we can maybe think about it as, let's say we have a recipe, and inside the recipe you have different kinds of tasks you have to do. And let's say there's something really common task, like slicing a bread or slicing some tomatoes. Instead of saying that you have to take a knife and you have to slice small portions of tomato and so on, we just say that slice tomato and slice bread. So basically we can say you have some task, let's say it's slice, and I can say that you have to do it several times. But actually this slice itself is like a small task, and I can kind of have smaller tasks inside this task. And instead of writing those 4 subtasks every time I want to have something sliced, I can just say that slice, and now everyone knows what the slice means, or I can look it up somewhere. For example, let's say there's in the cookbook there's a special area where all those special tasks are written out, what slicing means. And that's what we do in our program also. So instead of writing every small task, we group together those which make sense, or which are like grouped together as one bigger task. Or instead of having, like, let's say 100 lines in recipe, we usually have 7 or 10 or something like that. We just say that take this, take tomatoes, take bread, and then slice tomatoes and slice bread, instead of writing out that you have to take a knife and you have to do some cutting moves and so on. So in programs we do the same. So we write some code, we group them together, and then say that this code here is a function called slice, and we can use it everywhere in our code. And usually the functions should have like concrete purpose or concrete task. So in this example, slice is a good example for that. So how do you define a function? Function is defined along with the name, which currently is A here. Then we have optional parameters. Parameters are written inside parentheses. So here, currently there is no parameters. And then the function should also have a body, or the actual contents. What does the function do? So here's an example. We have a function called hello, and what it does, it just prints out hello world. The name is hello here. In the parentheses, currently we don't have anything. It's this function doesn't require any values to pass when we call it. But usually we can say that functions usually have some input, and we usually have some output. In this example, we don't have any input, and actually here we don't actually have any real output also, but we will get there. The name of the function is hello, and the body of the function prints hello world. What you have to know about the function definition in Python is that every line which has indent or 4 spaces in this example, this is the body of the function. So let's write it as def. Then we have hello. Currently we don't have any parameters here. And now we have to have indentation for the whole body of the function. Here we can say it's print. It can do several things. But everything which has this indentation, that's the body of this function. So basically I can say that this one here is the body of the function. And if I have some, let's say, print here, then this is not a part of the function anymore. So this is a separate statement which just prints out something. So everything which has the same indentation, or even it can have additional indentation. So everything which has at least the same indentation that the function has, it is the body of the function. But we will see this in examples. So here we didn't have any parameters. So basically there was no way to kind of control this function. But usually functions do have parameters, and the idea is that we can control the functionality or what the function does with those parameters. So basically I can say something, let's say I can pass in a name, and now the name can be used inside this function. And here is an example. So the function name is hello name, and the parameter here is name. And the name itself is actually a variable for this function. So we have a function, let's write it here. Define hello world, hello name, and name. And now inside this function I can use the name as a variable. So I can currently it's just printing out the name. But this is basically a variable with the given name. Currently the name of the variable is name. And when I call this function, I can pass in the value for this variable. Let's see how it works. Currently the name can be used as a variable inside this function. And now the outcome, or I can say that what the function does, it depends on this variable. It can depend on this variable. Of course, I can write the function which doesn't use this variable at all, but then there is no point to have this parameter. So how to use a function? Functions can be called, so I can call the function by name. And currently, as the name of the function is hello name, I can use the same name to call this function. And if this function has parameters defined, I have to pass those variables or those values in the function. So here are 2 examples. If I want to call this function, I can just write hello. And no values here. But if I want to call this function, I have to add the value here. Let's say it's Ago. Now what happens is that this value here will be put in this variable. So basically inside this function I could basically write something like name is Ago. So basically I assign this value which comes from here. Let's draw it. I assign this value into this variable. And now I can use this variable inside this function, maybe print out, maybe calculate something or whatever. In current example, we would just printed out the name. Yeah, and to call the function without parameters, we just write the name. There's nothing inside the parentheses, but we have to have the parentheses here. Otherwise, it's not a function call. And if there is a variable, I have to pass a value there. So what happens if we call out the function? So basically, if I try to show how the interpreter works, it takes lines from top to bottom and it executes those lines. So basically, let's say it's here, it prints out something. It currently doesn't print anything, it's just empty line. Now we reach here. What happens is that the interpreter sees that we have a function call here. Now the interpreter knows that we have to hold on here. Let's draw it with a different color. And we now have to find out the function called hello, and I will go here. Now what happens is that I execute this function. I will just execute the first line, second line, let's say there are 4 lines. And after the code within the function is finished, I can get back here and continue from here where I left off. So basically, this is like just the execution is put on hold in this line, and now I cannot move on before I have executed all this current function. So basically, in a recipe, if you have to slice something, you cannot go further before you have done this part. So currently I execute the hello code. Now I continue here. Now I go into hello name. Here again I will execute all the lines, and if the function has ended, I can continue from here. So here's an example. We have a print lines between those function calls. And now we can see what happens. First, what happens is that we execute the start, or printing out the start. So what happens is that the start will be put on the screen. Then we will go into hello. The hello did something, printed out something, some greeting. And now after the hello has been executed, then we can execute the print line which prints between. And after between, we will go into hello name, which probably takes this John and then prints out the greeting for John, and then it prints out the end. We can see how the code is executed in Python tutor. And what happens here is that it shows out exactly where the current or where the interpreter is and what lines are executed and so on. And we can move forward and backwards here. So I can just click next, and it shows which lines are to be executed. I can just click next. Currently, with the function definitions, it's just reading the definition, but actually it doesn't execute the functions now. It basically, you can see also it draws out what the values are in memory, basically, and you can see that the hello and hello name are basically functions inside memory. So the interpreter has to read those lines to actually know that those functions exist, and now I can use those functions. But the body of the functions are not executed here. Now the actual code starts here. So print start, and if I click next, it shows that the start is printed out. Then the next line to be executed is the hello here. I can click next, and it shows that it goes here. It goes to the hello function, and it executes this print line. So it prints out hello world, which is seen here. Now the function hello ends. It shows us the return value. We will talk about return value later, but basically it doesn't return anything, or it returns none. And now the function has ended. We can go back to this hello line here. Actually, you can see frames here. Frames are basically different places in the program where we currently are. And what happens here is that the global frame is the frame here. The global frame was put in hold because we went to separate position. And now we can continue from the frame. Currently, the active frame is this one here, but it shows that it's currently ending. And now the additional frame is removed here because this frame or this timeline kind of ended. And now we are back in the global frame. We go ahead and see that we have to print between. The between is printed out. Then we see the next line is hello name, which means also that we go into a separate timeline or into separate frame where we start executing this hello name function. And you can see also it has this variable called name, and the value is John. The value is taken from here. And again, I will execute the code. It prints out hello John, and now it returns none. This frame ends, and now we are back in the global frame. So basically, I don't know, if you read a book and there's a reference to some additional material, you kind of have to look up the reference, and after looking up you can continue reading. So basically functions work the same way.